Jesus, the man who will rule the world.
Good afternoon, everyone. You can see on the wall there the summary of what we're going to be looking at this afternoon. And first of all, it says there, what do we mean by world ruler? So I suppose if I were to give you all a piece of paper and a pen and ask you to write down the name of a world ruler, who might we come up with? Well, so I suppose we'd come up with names like Vladimir Putin, Joe Biden. Maybe we'd remember that Rishi Sunak is our current Prime Minister. Or you'd be trying to remember the name of that good-looking chap in Canada and trying to remember whether he was still Prime Minister over there or not. Then you've got Mr Macron in France and so on. And of course, when we get toward Asia, I've no idea who all these people are. Beyond a few, and I suppose unless you've got an interest in politics and current affairs, you might struggle. Well, how about religious leaders? We could probably name the Pope, or there's that Archbishop of Canterbury, and despite there being a coronation a while ago, we still can't remember his name. The Dalai Lama, the leader of Buddhism. We might think of a world leader as being a leader of a global organisation, like if I were to ask some of the young people here who the chairman of Amazon is, they will tell me it is. No, Jeff Bezos, young person over there. Very good. What about X, used to be known as Twitter? Who owns that these days? Elon Musk. All world leaders. They have global influence, these people, whether you consider them to be leaders or not. What about great leaders of the past? Well, you might think of, for some reason, the first one I wrote down was Nikita Khrushchev, who was the Russian president during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Lenin, Karl Marx, Henry VIII, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth II is now a historical figure. Disraeli, Margaret Thatcher, lover or loather. Sooner or later, somebody would write down Winston Churchill, I'm sure, JFK. What about the Caesars, the Pharaohs, Genghis Khan, Hitler, George Washington, Charles de Gaulle? And the thing about most of these world leaders, aside from the fact that most of them are now dead, is that none of them actually ruled all of the world. A lot of them ruled part of the world or had influence around the world, but none of them were actual world leaders of all or part of it. Well, let's look at some references about Jesus Christ as a world ruler. Let's just bring that round there. I think most of the references we're going to look at are on the projector here. Well, there's some people we might consider. I'm not sure if I could name all the people in the picture there. Yeah, I can probably do about. No, I can't name all of them at all. There's that lady who's the EU president, von Leyden, is it, or something like that? Can't remember. Yeah. But world rulers, kings and queens, presidents, prime ministers, tyrants and despots, religious leaders, business leaders, political reformers, and military leaders, all kinds of leaders. Oh, of course, we have a king at the moment. I forgot about him. I think most people have forgotten about him. What does the Bible say? Well, we read in Zechariah, don't we, that the Lord God is king over all the earth. The Lord shall be king over all the earth, and in that day there shall be one Lord and his name one. But God has delegated authority to his Son. We read that in Revelation. The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So there's going to be a change. The kingdoms of this world are going to become the kingdoms of Christ. And we have references in our Bible to Jesus as a worldwide ruler. One of the chapters we could have had read was Isaiah 9, where we read this: "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given," talking about the birth of Jesus, "and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace," the Everlasting Father being a title delegated to him by his Father, "the Prince of Peace. And of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom to order it." We'll pick apart some of this in a moment. "And to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." So we have various titles given to Jesus there by his Father, Wonderful Counselor, Prince of Peace, and he's going to be, we're told, there on the throne of David. We'll come back to some of those in a moment. But what we as Christadelphians believe is they're going to become, there's going to be a kingdom set up upon this earth where Jesus will be king, and a period of time, the initial period of time of this kingdom, I believe, will be 1,000 years. We haven't got time to look into that. And Jesus will be delegated all power by God to reign upon this earth. And then Jesus, who is still subordinate to his Father, will return the world to his Father in a perfected state, the way God had created it. And that will take about 1,000 years. What I'd like to look at is what qualifies Jesus to be a world ruler, a world leader, a king of the world. What qualifies him as that? What is his mandate? Just before I go on, there's another verse where I talked about the delegated authority of Jesus on the earth. This is talking about, when it says, Paul writes in Corinthians about the end. I think we looked at this verse this morning, didn't we? Then cometh the end, and this is talking about this 1,000-year reign to start with of Jesus on the earth. When he, Jesus, shall have delivered up the kingdom to God, even the Father, when he shall have put down all rule and all authority and power, for he, that's Jesus, must reign till he hath put all enemies under his feet. But when he saith all things are put unto him, it is manifest that he, that's Jesus, is accepted, which did put all things unto him. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him, that put all things unto him, that God may be all in all. So Jesus, although he's ruler of the world and is ruling over God's kingdom on the earth, is still subject to God, who is above all things still. It's an interesting verse to tackle a Trinitarian with, as I tried to do recently with somebody on the train. If you're worried about sitting next to a nutter on the train, I should warn you, it's probably me. So what gives Jesus the right to be king? So this is how you can get to be a ruler in this world. You can try democracy, where you're voted into power. Now, some of you may have heard there's a country that you hardly ever hear about in the news. It's called the United States of America. It's the self-proclaimed sort of world leader, self-proclaimed world's police force. They inflict their culture on the world through Hollywood and television and all that kind of things. And they have a system of democracy, which means people power. They're ruled by the people. And the wonderful thing about American democracy, and I'm being very ironic here, is that in a few months' time, they're going to, 5% of the population of this world is going to get to choose between somebody who's clearly got dementia and a deluded megalomaniac. And that is the only choice they've got. That's the two they've narrowed it down to. And I'm not even sure which one's which. But that's democracy for you. You get voted into power. And supposedly, in terms of human thinking and human rights, this is the best way to do it. This is people power. This is people deciding. Well, you have to be careful who you get. They say the countries of the world get the leaders they deserve. And if you want to get voted into power, well, you need popularity, bit of influence, bit of charisma, qualifications, experience, and I think most of all, good luck. Or, as we would see it, God is in control of these things. We're told in Daniel, the Most High rules in the kingdoms of men. You can get into power by corruption, by buying power. If you've got the right correct connections and plenty of money, you can buy power. You can have a revolution where you seize power. It used to be quite popular in parts of the world to have a military coup where there was somebody who got control of the military and use that power. And there's been plenty of people in the past, dictators. I think the Romans were quite good at this, where you kind of kill off all your enemies and all your opponents and then proclaim yourself to be in power. Or you could be born into power. King Charles III, he just happens to be the son of the previous queen. So you need to be born into ruling power otherwise. So what gives Jesus the right to be ruler? Which of these is it? Well, there's a fairly well-known prophecy, I'm sure, that you know well, in the book of Samuel. And this gives us part of Jesus' right to be king. But it's on various bases that he has this right to be king, but he's born into it. He's in the royal line. And this is a prophet talking to David. When thy days be fulfilled, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers. He's going to die, he says to David. And I will set up thy seed, your descendants after you, which shall proceed out of thy bowels. And I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. So he's going to be the son of God. So this rules out David's immediate son, Solomon, and his other sons. My mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, the previous king to David, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee, and thy throne shall be established forever. And this is reinforced in a few other places as well in the Psalms. The Lord hath sworn in truth unto David. This refers to what we just read. The Lord hath sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. You're going to have a literal son, David, who's going to be on your throne. And then Peter, the Apostle Peter, picks upon this after the resurrection of Jesus. He picks upon this, addressing a whole group of people who come from various parts of the world in Acts chapter 2 to Jerusalem. It says, men and brethren, let me freely speak unto you of the patriarch David, that he is both dead and buried, and his sepulchre is with us unto this day. Therefore, being a prophet, and knowing that God had sworn with an oath to him, that from Psalms and Samuel, God hath sworn with an oath unto him that of the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, he would raise up Christ to sit on his throne. And Peter makes it quite clear that the one who is going to be that descendant of David, and this is in various other places we can see it as well in our Bibles, was Jesus Christ himself. So Jesus has this right to be king. And we read it in Matthew when Jesus was, as he went into Jerusalem before his trial and his crucifixion, he went into Jerusalem. I don't see from the picture there, he's riding on essentially an ass, like a donkey, into Jerusalem. And it says, all this was done that it might be fulfilled that was spoken by the prophet, saying, tell ye the daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh unto thee meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. So when Jesus did that, he was fulfilling a prophecy that said, your king, to the people in Jerusalem, your king is going to come in this way. And Jesus did that and fulfilled that prophecy, demonstrating that he would be the king. And the people at the time, this is what they did. A very great multitude spread their garments in the way, and others cut down branches from the trees and strawed them in the way. And the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna, that means save now, to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. So the people then knew that this was the Son of David. They knew that this was, without doubt, this was the one who was going to fulfill all those promises. Of course, they wanted him to do it straight away, but he had to go through what he went through in terms of his trial and his death and his resurrection. And the fulfillment of this as king is actually still to come. So what kind of a ruler would Jesus be? Well, we could read through all of the, we read this morning, didn't we, of Jesus declaring to a woman that her sins were forgiven her. We read of Jesus in the boat with the disciples, calming the sea and the waves. And we could read through our Gospels and see all these instances of all things that people did, that Jesus did to build up an idea of his character. But his character, and particularly his character as a ruler, is outlined in the prophets in an extract from Isaiah 11, for instance. And just look at what it says of him in yellow there. Let's read it through. There shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse. So a shoot is going to grow out of a plant, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And Jesse was the father of David, so one of David's descendants. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither approve after the hearing of his ears. So we see what motivates this leader. What motivates Jesus? The Spirit of the Lord is motivated, driven by the same things that God is driven by, and God is love. He's driven by wisdom, by understanding, by counsel, which is advice and prudence, by might, which is force and valour, by knowledge, and by fear or reverence of the Lord. Have a picture in your mind of one of those world leaders that we talked about. Or maybe you could go for somebody like Donald Trump. Let's picture him and we'll just read through this. So, has he got the Spirit of the Lord? Has he got wisdom and understanding? You may be picturing a female world leader, I suppose. Has he or she got counsel, that's advice and prudence? Have they got force and valour? Have they got knowledge? Have they got the fear of the Lord? Are they quick of understanding? Do they judge after the sight of their own eyes or not? And do they reprove after the hearing of their ears or not? So you've got to be quick to understand, not judging on appearances, not judging based on hearsay. I mean, I'm not going to pick on him, but Trump doesn't seem to know the difference between truth and lies. And yet potentially he could be the next, again, American president. It's quite scary what humans can achieve, isn't it? What about Jesus? We read of him again in Isaiah. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor. He will reprove with equity for the meek of the earth, and shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth. And it's interesting in the word equity there, because it's not the same as equality. The world is very interested in equality, treat everybody the same. Equity is treating everybody right, which might not be the same. And with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked, and righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. And reins are what guide you, what steer you in that day. And it talks about then that the Gentiles shall seek, and his rest shall be glorious. He'll be popular with the nations of the world who want to be part of his kingdom. Now that chapter we read in Psalms has various themes in it. As we read through it, I'll just pick out some of the things we see in there about what kind of a ruler Jesus will be. And we see there's this idea of righteous judgment, making decisions according to what is right, of bringing peace to all, of saving the poor, of fear, that's the reverence of God. There'll be a watering of the earth. So in a sense, there's some solution to the problem of climate change. There'll be the flourishing of the earth, an abundance of peace. There'll be global dominion. If you want to get anything done, the problem with the world has with dealing with things like climate change is getting everybody on board with it. You know, we live in a country here where we're closing all the power stations and building wind turbines as quick as China can build power stations. So you've got to get everybody on board. Jesus will do that. Be respected by former enemies. Other rulers will submit to Jesus. He will save the poor and helpless from deceit and oppression. And lives will be precious, and he will receive praise and honour, and there will be plenty of food. That's just the themes that come out from that chapter in Psalm 72. It's interesting, Psalm 72 is often stated as being the coronation of the king, the coronation of Jesus as king. And just to confirm, there's a consistent message in our Bibles. We could look at Jeremiah. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I'll raise up unto David a righteous branch, and the king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is the name whereby he shall be called, the Lord our righteousness. Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. Something that certainly doesn't happen at the moment. And this leads us to another point we've already sort of alluded to, which is that the centre of the kingdom on earth will be Israel, and the capital city will be Jerusalem, which is a whole series of Bible talks in itself, really. But this is clearly shown, again, if we look in Isaiah chapter 2. We saw it in Isaiah chapter 2. Jeremiah 57. We'll read Jeremiah 57, then we'll go on to Isaiah 2. Therefore the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all the countries whither I've driven them, and they shall dwell in their land. So in the days of Jesus' rule, God is known not as the God that brought Israel out of Egypt, as we read in our Bibles, but as the God that brought Israel from all around the world where they're currently scattered to their own land under the rule of Jesus. This is the verse I was talking about in Isaiah chapter 2. It shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. This is the world capital. And many people shall go and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. Out of Zion shall go, in Jerusalem shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. It'll be the centre of government upon this earth. So what kind of ruler will Jesus be? Again in Isaiah, he shall judge among the nations, and I think this is on the this is on the United Nations building in New York. He shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And this is in complete contrast to the many of the world leaders now and potential ones who seem to be judged on their ability to spend money on defence spending. And of course, defence isn't really for defence, it's for attack. And there's been a lot in the news this week about the government and the countries in NATO, how they have to spend so much of their domestic product on defence and contributing to the combined defence budget. That will cease when Jesus is king. Well, all governments have various policies, don't we? Let's think of some of the policies. There's an employment policy here that Jesus will implement. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. It'll be subsistence living. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labour in vain, nor bring forth for trouble. And some of us may have jobs where sometimes I suppose we feel like we're labouring in vain. We're doing something which has no product at the end of it. I used to feel like that a bit when I worked for the government. Labour in vain. An education policy. The Bible tells us about Jesus' education policy. In the last days it shall come to pass that the mount of the house of the Lord shall be established on the top of the mountains. It shall be exalted above the hills. It will teach us of his ways. We go down to the bottom there because we've read this, and we will walk in his paths, for the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. That's an education policy, isn't it? An environment policy. The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoicing with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord and the excellency of our God. And there's lots of changes that will happen for the better for the environment when Jesus returns. The health policy. The eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. No government minister can promise this. Then shall the lame man leap as an hart, and the tongue of the dumb shall sing. And again in Isaiah, there shall no more hence be an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days. So long life for everybody, for the child shall die 100 years old. That's the policy of Jesus Christ as King. And more than that, we, those who are part of this kingdom, the believers, the faithful, will be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption. There's no lead in the sword that can promise immortality and this kind of thing to anybody. And death ultimately will be abolished there. Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? And we've already mentioned the defence policy. Well, the defence policy is that there will be peace, and weapons will be converted into implements of agriculture. Violence, law and order policy. Violence will no more be heard in the land. I'm sure there's, I suspect many of you live in Birmingham. I'm sure the mayor, I know his name, Andy Street, I'm sure he gets involved trying to bring about an end to violence on the streets of Birmingham. Well, here we have violence will no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. I suppose it'll be a long day before Birmingham gets called salvation and praise. And they shall every man sit under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. That's the world that Jesus is promising to us. Well, Jesus isn't going to be on his own. I suspect many of the faces in that picture have changed since. That was a cabinet meeting when Rishi Sunak first became Prime Minister. I think I can name about 3 of the people on there. Yeah, so there's Rishi Sunak in the middle. I know that's Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor on the right, because he recently did the budget. And I think the Defence Minister is that Grant Shapps. That's about all the ones I can remember. But some of those have changed. And I think one of them has defected to one of these other parties since. But that was, Rishi Sunak's not on his own. He heads up a cabinet. And Jesus is going to be the same. He's going to have helpers with him. He's going to have ministers. Jesus said unto them, that's his disciples, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So there's going to be ministers with Jesus, and in the case of the disciples, they will be judging the 12 tribes of Israel. There's going to be a lot of other people in God's kingdom, and there's going to be a lot of other ministers. So it says in Romans, if we're God's children, we're heirs and heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together. And again, we read in Revelation, Jesus has made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever, and hath made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. So how would you fancy a job in Jesus's government? Well, there's some others, I think, who probably merit places in Jesus's government. See who these are. Well, there's Abraham. He was a friend of God, held up as this great example of actions driven by faith. I'm sure he will get a place in Jesus's government. Moses, he led possibly up to 2 million people for 40 years and showed them God's ways. He gave the people God's laws. He even survived a leadership challenge. I'm sure he will have a place in Jesus's government. What about Joseph? He was a very prudent prime minister during his time in Egypt. He put into place a plan to feed the people and much of the world around during 7 years of famine, after there'd been 7 years of plenty. What about Daniel? He was a prime minister in a country where he was able to predict the future in politics. He'd be a great asset in any government, I think. There's plenty of others. Joshua is the leader of a rolling military campaign to invade Canaan. Solomon, the wisest and wealthiest ruler there ever was, ruled over the first kingdom of God after David. David himself, a man after God's own heart, he was the king. Elijah, the great prophet. Peter, the rock, who was told by Jesus to be the shepherd of Jesus' followers. Paul, how about him for the education minister? And the 12 apostles who are already seen able to teach and perform miracles. But there's going to be other vacancies. And those vacancies are for you and I. Blessed are the meek, said Jesus, for they shall inherit the earth. The meek shall inherit the earth, it says in Psalms, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. The Lord knows the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. So potentially, with Jesus ruling upon this earth, is going to be you and I. And we read in Daniel, the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. And through our understanding of these things, and through our faith and our belief and our obedience to the Lord Jesus Christ, we have the promise of being with him in that kingdom upon the earth. Thank you.